Welcome to Small Group. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion around the internet and the impact it has on us, both the opportunities on the one hand and the challenges or the dangers on the other hand that it poses. I think in the last couple of decades, and especially in the last couple of years, the internet has become very important to us, and most of us can't imagine what we do without it. Not just in terms of navigating in a city like Johannesburg on Google Maps, but when we want to go and visit places, we go online, we go and check them out, we're going to check out the reviews, see what they offer, check out menus. We have business going online. Some of the biggest businesses in the world are actually online businesses. If we want to do shopping, we shop online. If we want information, we Google it, we go to YouTube. If we want to know how to fix our cars, we go and get a YouTube video that tells us how to fix our cars. And there's just so much information available on the internet. It's actually, we live in an age of information overload. And the situation with the coronavirus, COVID-19, has just sort of exacerbated that, because most, if not many of us in the world have moved from working at the office to working at home, and most often working online. For us as a church as well, because we cannot at this moment have services, a lot of our meetings has moved online. And I mean, that's a great opportunity. It's a wonderful opportunity that technology offers us to be able to make that move, to be able to remain connected with one another, even though we cannot physically connect with one another. At this moment, we can still stay in connection with one another, and that's a great thing. But there are also a couple of dangers and challenges that we face regarding the internet, and I just want us to, in small group this week, discuss two of them. The first is this: how can we, in an age of information overload, how can we filter out the bad information? Because here's the situation. The problem that we face, or one of the challenges that we face in terms of the internet, is not how to get information anymore, but how to get the right information. Because there's a lot of great information available on the internet, but there's also a lot of bad information available, a lot of lies and a lot of half-truths. And the major challenge that most of us face is not getting information, but getting the right information, or getting the best information. Gone are the days when you could sort of go to a website and sort of trust that whoever put the information on there was honest or an expert in their field, and that the information can be trusted. There are lots of websites that look quite legit, but they're actually not. They look quite professional, but they're not set up by experts, and the information is not true or accurate. And we've got to ask ourselves the question: how can we avoid being gullible? In other words, how can we develop the discernment? And that's a question for all of us. How can we develop the discernment to distinguish between good information and bad information? In other words, there's a danger in knowledge that is untested. I just want to read you a little scripture that sort of relates to that, not obviously about the internet, but it relates to the problem of untested knowledge. Has been a problem even before the information and the internet age. This is from Galatians 2. In verse 1, Paul talks about going to Jerusalem, and then he says, in verse 2, he says, I went in response to revelation, and meeting privately with those esteemed as leaders, I presented to them the gospel that I preached among the Gentiles. I wanted to be sure I was not running and had not been running my race in vain. In other words, what Paul is saying here is that I've got a revelation from God, but I don't trust that revelation. I don't trust the information. I don't trust this knowledge unless it's been tested by others. And that's a big part. And what Paul does is he tests it in community. He takes it to the other apostles and says, this is what I've been preaching. This is the gospel I've been preaching. You test it. You tell me, is it right? Because I don't want to run in vain. And that's one of the reasons why we're in small group. That's one of the reasons why we spend time together. I often say you get sort of 3 levels of understanding. One level is understanding well, let's start with the negative side. The one level is lack of understanding. When you don't understand something and you know you don't understand it. So lack of understanding. Then a next level is understanding, where you actually get to understand it, where you have a mental grasp on it, where it makes sense to you, and where you have an accurate understanding of it. But there's another level called misunderstanding, where you think you understand it, but you actually misunderstand it. You understand it incorrectly. And the problem is that where we know, where we are aware of the things that we don't understand, where we lack understanding, we're actually not aware of the things that we misunderstand, where we have a misunderstanding. Because to the person who misunderstands, their misunderstanding is understanding. And the only way we can figure out where the things are that we misunderstand is by spending time in community with one another. And the only way we can make sure that when we're watching something on the internet, a YouTube video, listening to a podcast, reading something on a web page or a blog or something, the only way we can make sure that we avoid a lot of misunderstanding is if we apply some discernment concerning what we see, what we hear, what we read. And so the challenge, like I said, in an age of over-information or information overload, is not how to find good information, but how to filter out bad information. The challenge is not how to find accurate knowledge, but how to avoid and filter out the lies and the half-truths. So one of the things I want us to talk about is how do we do that? How do we sharpen our discernment? Especially in this time when a lot of us are going to be spending a lot of time online, social media, maybe listening to podcasts, watching video clips and stuff like that. How can we sharpen our discernment to make sure that we don't inadvertently get misinformation and through that misunderstanding and basically get deceived? So that's the one question I want you to discuss in small group. The second question is this, and it's related to it, but slightly different. On the internet, through podcasts, video clips, all that kind of stuff, we can get a lot of useful information, a lot of good information, a lot of upbuilding information, wholesome information. But even the good information can be bad if we use it in the wrong way. Even the wholesome, accurate information can be bad if we use it in the wrong way. So often in our information age, we'll use the internet, and the internet is designed to suck us in. You watch one video clip and then, you end up, watching 5 or 10 or 50. And, any 5 minutes you spend on YouTube is probably the, worst 5 hours you've wasted on the internet, because that's what it ends up being. It ends up being lots of hours. So it sucks you in. And the question we have to ask ourselves is the time that we spend on the internet, is it supplementing our personal direct time with God, or is it substituting our personal direct time with God? We were talking with the elders earlier in the week about this issue, and Sharon mentioned that, and she said the challenge that we face is that very easy, instead of just using all the good information we can get on the internet to supplement our personal time with God, it often ends up substituting our time with God. And the reality is that it's so easy to settle for an indirect, second-hand relationship with God, where we're constantly running on other people's revelation, other people's learning, other people's testimonies, other people's encouragement, other people's growth, other people's prayers and ministries, instead of directly connecting with God for ourselves. So one of the things we want to encourage all of you to do is connect with God directly. Make sure that the first thing that we do, and maybe you have more time now, because you're not driving around so much, self-isolating at home, and you're spending more time at home because you're working from home. Make sure that you give first priority to just spending time with God directly, spending time in the Word, reading the Bible for yourself, and spending time praying to God first and foremost. And once you've done those two things, spending time with God individually and maybe with your family, then by all means supplement it with videos or podcasts or other good information. But remember to use discernment and test the information, test the knowledge. So I just want us to discuss those two issues, those two questions. Do you have the discernment? Are you actually using discernment when you get input from the internet? Even if it's from sources that you trust. Even if it's someone like me, you're part of the congregation, I'm the pastor of the congregation, you trust me, are you measuring it against Scripture? Are you using discernment? And then secondly, how are you going to avoid the danger of using this information overload, this easily accessible and often interesting and exciting information, to substitute your time with God? And I just want us to discuss that in small group this week and hold one another accountable on that as we go into this time where we're going to spend a lot of time on the internet. Thank you very much. Enjoy.